Well, Blurple is on the rise. That's right. On Ink Decks, it was literally not even in the top 10, and then just like that, it shot up to being the third most played deck this weekend. I mean, that's pretty incredible, and it had some pretty major wins that we are going to be taking a look at. So let's go ahead and dive in to what that meta report is and how everything is shaping up right before set champ. So let's go ahead and dive in. So, of course, yes, Hiram, Fortisphere, Band, all of that jazz has been old news at this point. We have adjusted in the meta, and there are things that are rising to the surface that are very interesting. First off, Zan ended up winning a 97-player tournament that took a pretty interesting turn because what was he playing? Oh, Jafar Wheel, but a little bit different of a variation. We're going to be playing that deck in a little bit of a different video here coming up. We have it all built. Really interesting idea. Love the idea as well. And he was able to absolutely do a great job. We were able to see his two final matches, the semifinals and finals, of course, where he went against Blurple in the first one in the semifinals, and then in the finals he went against EA. Yep. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that all developed and everything. But go ahead and take a look at that footage as well because it's really interesting gameplay. You can find that on Twitch under JDZ. JDZ Quest, really cool guy. Love the guy. Play against him a lot. Just super chill dude. Anyway, with that being said, though, there is a lot going on in this meta, and so we're going to be going ahead and taking a look at Ink Decks. If you go ahead and click on metagame, you can go ahead and see the win rates, and also under the tournaments, you can see all the major tournaments. So first and foremost, let's go ahead though and took a look at the win rates. Now this is going to be pretty crazy here. We're going to be jumping over me here. This is going to be really interesting. Again, like I said, we had about maybe 30 to 40 matches on the Blurple to where it was like way down here under discard. It was above locations come Wednesday, Thursday-ish when I last checked it. Very interesting. And then all of a sudden it shot up to from 42-ish to now 152 matches. That is just absolutely insane to be able to see as well. And so it's interesting. Steelsong, of course, seems to still be the deck that's on top here, and rightfully so. It is probably the one that has the best matchups going into everything. The thing to keep in mind about this, of course, is that the hardest matchup that it is going to be having is still going to be Popsicles, just especially because of that in-game. If you have a Sisu in hand, you're going to be wiping most of the board. If you have, Be Prepared, then you're going to be wiping most of the board. And you got to be so careful about how you play Steelsong against Popsicle. You're basically not playing the song part. You're playing the aggro part. I put everything back that isn't a Daisy, a Smee, and things that are going to get me there. So I try to go turn 1 Daisy, turn 2 maybe another Daisy if I get lucky with a Queen, do 2 1-drops, or go with a Smee. Turn 3, try to go maybe with another Smee and a 1-drop, or I go with like a Lawrence, something along those lines. Anything that I can do to go as fast as I can to be able to take this game by storm. Because as soon as we get to the late game, it's not a fun time for us for Steelsong. That was the main deck that I played at a tournament this weekend, and it was very interesting to be able to see. Really good job right there and whatnot. But yeah, Popsicle is going to be the biggest matchup right there. Surprisingly enough, EA Bounce has a 33 win rate. They only won 1 out of 3, which isn't, of course, the most amount of data, especially since, again, all of this is brand new since the post-Hiram ban. But it is still something to definitely keep in mind. Everything else, though, is really interesting on the matchups here. Now, of course, the discard, very promising there as well. Bounce control, 69% win rate. Absolute insanity there. And I can find that bounce control is actually shifting a little bit to where that win rate might actually be going down, in my opinion, because it seems like they're actually doing a little bit better. They've made the adjustments, especially going into Steelsong, and it's going into now more of like a 50-50 kind of matchup. Bounce control seems to be having a better matchup against Steelsong. Now, that's going to be still a very difficult thing. And rightfully so. I mean, they say that the Ruby Amethyst aggro, it's not aggro. If you take a look at the decks that have been placing and things like that, it's mid range and it's the regular bounce control, and so things to keep in mind. Now, of course, we still see Popsicle popping up a little bit more. DKP, of course, has been still playing the Popsicles here, and it's been really interesting to see how he's been doing. There was a really big tournament, 517 players. The decks aren't on Ink decks yet that I've at least been able to find. But it was a Chernodog that actually ended up winning it. DKP ended up getting top 16 with it as well, losing to Chernodogs. Mainly just, he said, of course, there were some misplays and things like that. Popsicles aren't out yet, but I will say this, it does feel like Popsicles is going to be one of the hardest decks to now pilot. You got to be very careful about how you play and what you go about with your gameplay and things of that nature as well. It can be a very difficult game for you to play, and it can still have a lot higher chance of bricking itself. And so that's something that you just got to keep in mind as you play this deck. It's going to be a very difficult thing to be able to do. Now, that's not to say that you need to necessarily count it out. It still has some really good matchups, and at the end game, even top decking can be a very good thing for you to be able to do here. Things to keep in mind with that. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this continues to evolve here, really, just because there's a whole lot going on here that is very interesting with Popsicles. But it seems like it's actually doing a pretty good job. Discard, for example, is probably its biggest weakness. And surprisingly enough, Amethyst Steel Bounce, but that makes a lot of sense too, because outside of maybe Be Prepared, the removal can be a little bit hard. Having the 3 and 4, attack characters can be really difficult to be able to do, and on top of that, they have the removal. So the biggest thing that the deck mainly relies on at this point is going to be the Maui Shark, and that's going to be the biggest thing. The Maui Half Shark is going to be annoying, but when you have a Zeus in hand, and you're almost kind of anticipating it, you're going to be saving the Zeuses for those kinds of matchups and situations that you're going to be finding yourself in, and still, it's going to be a difficult thing. Now, Dwarven Mine, they've only had, of course, one match. We're not going to necessarily take that for what it's worth, kind of thing. They lost to it, but I can see why Dwarven Mine would still be a good matchup against Popsicle. Again, if it misses a little bit and turn 2, you just go ahead and play the Dwarven Mine and things of that nature, you're just going to be in a good spot. Turn 1 Daisy, turn 2 Dwarven Mine, you're looking good. And so with that, though, the biggest thing that is going to be really interesting here that I am going to be talking about is Blurple, and it seems like it's actually having a pretty good win rate as well. Now, of course, the biggest matchups that are going to be a difficult situation for it is, of course, going to be Steelsong, rightfully so. It's everyone's pretty much hardest matchup at this point. And then also Popsicle as well, just because it has a lot more removal in the late game, especially, than what Blurple does have as well. Now, of course, Blurple is going to be relying a little bit more on potentially trying to get out the the McDuck Manors and things of that nature as well, but they don't have the Maui Sharks that Popsicle does have, but they do have a lot better draw power than what Popsicle now currently has as well. And so that's probably why we have seen the biggest uptick. It just does have a lot better of consistency here as well, and it's a little bit of an outlier. Not too many people have actually really practiced or played against Blurple, so it can be a very difficult deck to kind of match up against, because these are new situations for them to be finding themselves in, and that's going to be a little bit difficult to be able to undertake there in that case. And of course, it still has some really great matchups. Going against discard, surprisingly, 67% win rate. The discard EA, 75 out of 4 matches. It won 3 of the 4. But EA, it struggles with a lot as well, just because they can go wide. As soon as you go wide against Blurple, it's a rough time for them. You're gonna have a bad time. Anyway, but with that, yeah, Blurple, that's gonna be the hardest thing here in this case, is that they are gonna be, if you go wide, they are very good at taking out things individually. They have the Hades, they have the Let It Goes, they have a lot of really good cards in their arsenal, but at the same time, it's just not necessarily going to be anything to write home about. They're going to be digging themselves a hole if their opponent goes too wide. But then again, you have foxes and things of that nature that can really help. McDuck Manor, Bell, not Ariel, Bell can also really help out in this meta as well. If Blurple is running the bells with the popsicles, for example, and that can be a little bit difficult to try to get a popsicle out, but still, even with that, it's not necessarily even a bad thing to play out the bell, especially in late game when you have 12 lore or more, or 12 ink or more. You're not usually hurting at that point. But still, you are going to be wanting your bounce backs and things like that to replay Hades, to replay Elsas and things of that nature to be able to slow down your opponent. Really interesting deck ideas. We're going to be taking a look at the deck list as well as we dive into the tournaments later in this video. Bounce Control, Ruby, Amethyst. Yes, this is going to be a tough one because it has really difficult matchups. And that's kind of the hardest part. It hasn't necessarily gotten all that much of support, especially with set 7. And that's something that you're going to have to keep in mind as you go about playing this deck. That's going to be the hardest thing about it. The interesting thing is, of course, Steelsong, it has a really difficult matchup. I ended up barely losing because we ended up going to turns at my tournament against Bounce Control. And they had a better board built than me, and I was just hitting my one drops that just weren't able to really do all that much to get me, and I lost by 1 lore at turns. Sucks, but that's how it is. Anyway, but with that being said, Bounce Control can be a very difficult deck to go against, but it's really interesting as well that against Amethyst Steel seems to be like it's Kryptonite as well as Steelsong. Now, of course, like I said, the Ruby Amethyst seems to be shifting a lot with how it's going. We thought, and initially when Ruby Amethyst came back into the meta after the bans, it felt like everyone was preparing for discard to be the number 1 deck, and that's going to be the biggest thing here. It was almost supposed to be the number 1 deck here, but that's the interesting part here is that it's not. And in fact, it actually is a little bit more Steelsong, but even still, not by necessarily much. Like I said, we see bounce, or you see popsicles, Blurple and Steelsong pretty much being really close together in that case. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how all of this is going to be going from here on out as well. But that's going to be really interesting. Discard, of course, is still being pretty prevalent as well, though the win rate is a little bit lower. 75 matches, it's kind of fallen by the wayside, especially EA Bounce. Discard, it's really interesting that the EA discard had a lot more of a prevalence and matchup against when Hiram and Fortisphere was still here, which is really interesting as well. And then it finds itself, not even making it into the top. Discard is always going to be a little bit difficult of a deck. It's kind of a little bit of an outlier. You're hoping that you have a good start in your hand. You have to almost get the correct card combinations going. Diablo also is able to be removed so easily these days. You're almost hoping that it can be at least in the Hidden Cove to be able to survive. But even still, if you have to even hard cast a Diablo and then maybe move it into the Hidden Cove, that can be a really difficult thing and really kind of slow you down more than it benefits you, especially if on the next turn they just end up Zeusing it anyway, or doing a Strength of Raging Fire. The nice part about discard, though, at least for the Emerald Steel, is that they do have the removal as well, which is really helpful. But still, again, this is going to be a very difficult matchup. And I mean, look at all these. Bounce, Amethyst Steel, 0 out of 3, 1 out of 6 for aggro version. Aggro, bounce even in the matchup. EA is doing really good about that. 0 out of 4 kind of thing. And then even so with Blurple as well, out of 12 matches, they've won 3. That's difficult. And it's really interesting to be able to see how all of that is going with that. It's tough, and I totally get it, but that's how it is. And so with that, the last one that we are going to be, or the last two that we're going to be, or the last one, that we are going to be looking at is the bounce and the aggro. Now, of course, both these decks are a little bit different here. Now, with that being said, it's an interesting deck combination here as well. Now, of course, 69 matches for bounce, 69 matches for aggro. Nice. That's really good. Now, of course, against Steelsong, it actually has pretty much one of the best matchups percentages that we've been able to see against Steelsong. And then against Ruby Sapphire, it's been doing really good as well. Now, of course, against Blurple, and Blurple is on the rise, it only has a 29% and a 20%. Now, of course, at the same time, could that be? Yes, it is a harder matchup, but they also might not have been practicing against these kinds of matchups, and that can be a really difficult thing to be able to undertake here as well. And so it's going to be interesting to see how all of that seems to shape up. But still, the rest of the win rates are actually really good. They don't necessarily struggle against discard, really, just because they're able to go ahead and get a good amount of card draw. So by the time your opponent goes ahead and runs out of things, that you're still in a really good spot. And then even still, on the same time with that, they are going to be able to get some good lore gain going. They're going to be able to get things moving and things of that nature. But still, it's going to be interesting to see how everything continues to shape up. Now, we're finally having some big tournaments that are coming our way. Not the Japan one, though. 57 on a set 2, kind of thing is really cool to be able to see. But the biggest thing that we are going to be taking a look at first off is the Randolph tournament. Now, with that being said, the Randolph is a really interesting one. Discard ended up taking first here, and then aggro bounce we actually get to see in second and top 4 with that as well. That's going to be really interesting. Now, with that, and why that is a little bit more interesting is because this is the deck list. Now, of course, they're going to be going the Peter Pan and Iago combo right there as well, because it has evasive, which means Peter Pan immediately goes ahead and gives it rush just like that, which could be an absolutely big difference here. And again, if you go ahead and the win matrix is really interesting to be able to take a look at. If you go here on Inkdex, you can go to metagame and click out win rate matrix. So really interesting stuff right there to be able to look up that kind of stuff. And then with that as well, so this is just a really interesting idea. Of course, the gifted with healing, that's going to be really good. 3 world's greatest criminal minds to take care of the big stuff, especially getting rid of a Maui shark right away is going to be looking really good. You're going to be seeing friends on the other side, for example. That's going to be really helpful as well. Bare necessities to get rid of songs that might be, taking out your characters. If you can get rid of a Strength of Raging Fire, a Zeus, or things like that against the matchups, then you're going to be in a really interesting predicament here. This is an interesting idea. I love what this is trying to do. The library is going to be able to maintain a good amount of card draw as well. I wouldn't necessarily say this is aggro, personally. This is going to be a little bit more of kind of a, not a mid-range, but more of a slower play, of course, but close to mid-range. It's interesting, just especially because, you're going to be seeing some bells, some Elsas, and things like that, and then you're going to be hoping that your daisies are going to be able to hit the ground running and whatnot. Now, of course, the Madam Mim Tiny Adversary is really interesting as well. Other characters gain Challenger +1. And then, of course, while challenging, this character gets +1 as well. Sure, cool, fine. But giving your other character's challenger +1 can really make a big difference in that. And so just really interesting that we're able to see that. Now, of course, bounce, purple steel, lost to the aggros, or lost to the amber amethyst deck combinations, and so that's really interesting there as well. But this is kind of what we're going to be seeing here. Bagheera actually is making an appearance, and I mean, it's such a good card. Being able to sing anything at 5 as well is really good. But on top of that, it's a bodyguard, and then during your opponent's turn, when this character is banished, deal 2 damage to each opposing character. That's pretty dang good right there. Now, of course, some more interesting things that we're going to be seeing here is that we're going to be seeing where was it? I just saw it. We got, of course, the giant cobra, 4 of those to be able to get that final lore gain at the very end. Some snakes, some foxes. Everything else is actually pretty standard. Fire the cannons for that early Diablo matchup or anything that might be a little bit scary that you might need to take out there as well. 1 library, which I don't necessarily agree with. If you're going to be playing 1 library, you might as well just either take it out or go up to 3. I feel like you either have to run 3, maybe 4, or just none at all. There's no point in really doing that at that point. So it's going to be interesting to see how this is going to be going here, but I really like how these decks are looking. Now, of course, we do have a Blurple. We're going to be taking a look at that. Now, purple-red locations ended up getting top 16, which is really interesting. We'll take a look at that real quick to be able to see, just give you guys a little bit of ideas here. Now, of course, Pegasus is going to be the biggest thing. The hardest part is this is going to be mainly the evasive takeout for, Diablos and those early threats as well. If they happen to get a Bell out as well, you can go ahead and play a Pegasus and take it out as well and whatnot. And then, of course, we got the Peter Pan that can go ahead and give it rush as well. So you can go ahead and pay 2 and basically take something out with it as well. So it's a really interesting combo right there. That's going to be really fun. And so that's going to be the biggest thing, though, is that's kind of going to be the new combo that we're seeing with Amethyst Ruby as well, is that it's going to be the Iago and the Peter Pan Shadow Finder, because if you can get the Shadow Finder out, then you can go ahead and get the parrot. He can do 4. He's going to stay out, and then your opponent has to use another, potentially removal spell to be able to go ahead and target it so that it gets banished. That's a lot to go into that, and it does a really good job at being able to do that. No genies in this list as well, which is really interesting, but 2 Lady Tremaines, which is going to be pretty fun as well. Really interesting deck combinations here. Now we have Sharkbane now near $60, because why the frick not? Now, I'm going to sneeze. Woo! Woo! Vashery, hello. I'm filming a YouTube video and you caught me mid sneeze, so not gonna necessarily be talking a whole lot, but all right. Woo! That was tough. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Let's see. Let's get back. All right, and with that as well, we have the Cutler Card Market 2K with 48 players. The main reason that I'm going to be taking a look at this deck is because Anthony Eckroth, he is a Utah born and raised kind of guy, and he ended up getting first with his Blurple going 7-1-1, which is really good as well. The intentional draw, of course, to get into the top going on right there. And so with that being said, Bounce is going to be really prevalent right now. This is going to be the deck that we are going to be taking a look at here pretty soon. This card ended up losing against a Bounce that is always going to be a really great matchup in this case. The Sudden Chill discard doesn't necessarily do all that great against Bounce, which is really interesting. Steelsong ended up getting third with the same record as first, 7-1-1 as well. Really good combination. We're going to be taking a look at that deck list as well. And then, of course, EA Bounce is back. That's going to be something to really keep in mind here, because especially with the Hiram being gone, it seems like that there has been a lot that has changed. The meta has been a lot wider in this case. And then also we have a Sing Together as well that we are going to be taking a look at. Now, of course, a lot of people playing Popsicles are playing more of the DKP version. You're seeing a few cards being variants here, but all in all, it's pretty much the same deck. So let's go ahead and dive into the Blurple here, and then we're going to look at one more tournament after this, and then that'll be the conclusion of the video here. Now, with that being said, though, this is going to be really interesting. He is playing the Magic Broom here, and then going straight into the Tipo, the Bell, the Madam M Fox, the Crab, the Genie Wish Fulfilled, Iago, Merlin Go, Bell, to remove damage, and then Elsa, Tamatoa, and Hades. No big Elsa. That's going to be one of the most interesting parts about this. Normally, people in Blurple are running 2, maybe 3 even, of the big Elsa to be able to freeze your opponents in place and also be able to quest for 3, which can be a really big deal. But in this case, doesn't look like it. Instead, he's going with the Tamatoas, especially just with 4 items in the deck, aka the Popsicle, of course, being able to draw a card or heal 2 damage when you banish it. And then with that being said, Sail the Azurite Sea for the ramp, Finders Keepers, Friends on the other side, and a Library Gift for Bell. 4 of those to really maintain that card draw, especially mid to late game if they start removing stuff. It's really good to start getting that kind of stuff moving. So it's going to be really fun to be able to see how that goes. So with that being said, it's going to be really interesting to see how Blurple continues to develop and move, because right now it seems like it's in a really good spot. And I mean, I was wondering why Hades was going up in price so much. It was about a $7 to $8 card about 2 weeks ago. And then just like that, it soared all the way up to $23, and that's because, well, everyone's now switching over to Blurple, it looks like, which is pretty awesome to be able to see. Now, of course, with that, we have the Amber Steelsong Robin the Bianca. Now, of course, they're going to be going the Robin Hood shift line, the Miss Bianca, which is a 5/5, and if you have an ally out, you get to pay 2 less for it, which is really good for a 5/5. That's pretty scary, especially to try to take care of. Everything else is actually pretty standard. You got the Ariel, the Troubadour, which has resist +1 and Singer 4. 2 Calhouns, pretty great. Impervious Bow to really get Challenger +2 and Evasive to be able to take care of those evasive characters. And then a bunch of songs. World Greatest Criminal Mind is going to be absolutely paramount. I play 2 in my deck as well. The biggest difference between my deck and this deck, of course, though, is I don't really like the Robin Hood shift line. It helps more mid to late game, but in the early game, if you have the Robin Hood shift line and an Aerial in hand, you just kind of get yourself. I don't like, oh, do I play the Aerial and hope that Robin Hood survives one more turn so that I can go ahead and shift it, kind of thing? Because if you get the whole thing about the songs is trying to get your singers to be able to sing the songs, kind of thing, and so. But this deck was still able to do really good in that situation here. A fellow Jordan also being able to get 3rd place at this tournament. So really great job. Well done from this player. And then, of course, we have a Notice Me Kawa. And so this is going to be interesting. And I mean, we saw like a version of this deck, and this deck has been popping up a little bit more. But it actually getting a 6th place finish is pretty dang good because it has some really fun stuff. Now, of course, the Diablo as normal Sir Hiss, Ursula to be able to remove some songs, Ariel, Diablo, of course, Prince John, the dumbest card, Ward, Muses and Prince John, I absolutely hate. Ward, and able to have its ability while readied. That's the thing I wish they got rid of in this game. Cricky's going to be one of the best cards as well, giving all your characters +3 attack this turn. And then, of course, Kita as well to give -3 to all the characters until they'll start next turn. You Have Forgotten Me, of course, is going to discard some cards. Painting the Roses red. Strike a Good Match. Sudden Chill. Bare Necessities. We Don't Talk About Bruno. And Under the Sea. I never really like Under the Sea being at 4, but of course when you need it, it's better to have it. But again, if you have the card and you can't necessarily play it, it can feel pretty bad trying to get things going with that, and it's kind of a dead card in your hand, which can really hurt and slow you down there. So you got to be a little bit careful about that. Now, of course, with that said, everything else has actually done pretty good in this case. So some Blurple here, or EA, sorry about that. EA is going to be really interesting. Again, they're going with the Iago play right here. And then with that, though, they have the Peter Pan Shadowfinder. It looks like the 3 and 3 is going to be the best combination there as well. They also have the Pegasus, which you can also give Rush if you so choose, which will be really interesting as well. And so some really fun stuff. And then some Flynn Rider for discard, some Go-Go for that late game lore gaining for 4, which is really crazy as well. No big Ursula in this case as well, just Elsa, and that's really it. And Emerald Comic-Con for bounce back, and then we've even been seeing some Lyle as well coming back into the game to really get that going. So really interesting deck combination. Love how this has looked. But then, of course, yes, with that, we are going to be looking at one more tournament. Of course, the Lucky Llama, Lorcana SmackDown. Now, why are we going to be talking about this tournament in particular? The biggest reason, of course, that we are going to be talking about is Zan Sneed, a guy that has a very impressive resume. 97 players, ended up winning with a Jafar wheel deck. Now, of course, his final 2 matchups were pretty heavily in his favor, of course, with that as well. Though it does feel like the EA bounce could have actually taken the game. But again, I feel like the biggest thing that kept Jafar wheel in the game is that people didn't necessarily know what they were going against in this case, which is going to be really interesting as well. Deck lists were made available as well that you were able to look at in the top 16 kind of thing. But with that as well, the biggest thing about EA that has a difficulty with Jafar Wheel is that they don't necessarily have the removal unless they're able to challenge into it, which makes it very difficult to be able to do so. And so you get the Jafar out, you go ahead and shift into the big Jafar, then you just draw a crazy amount of cards, and you get a lot of just boom, running to the end of the world with a lot of lore gain with every card that you draw. And so it's a really interesting deck idea. And I mean, I have it built right here. We're going to be playing it today as well and seeing how it actually does. One of the biggest things that I absolutely love about this deck that we're going to be talking about is going to be the Lamp. Now, the biggest thing about this card is you can pay 2 and you can banish it at any time. And so you're seeing a lot of combinations where someone's playing, the Jafar, the 2-cost Jafar. They already have a genie out on the board. Then they play the lamp and they just banish it as soon as it comes into play. And then you draw 2 cards. And then if you have a genie in play, you can bounce back a chosen character with 4 or less to their player's hand. That's insane for 2. And I mean, yes, you got to hope that you have some other stuff out onto the board, but still, it's very possible that you're going to be having a 2-cost Jafar or a 3-cost Jafar, or even more so, of course, the big Jafar Striking Illusionist. This deck, in the most ideal hand, of course, can go incredibly fast, where you go like the turn 1 Robin Hood, and then you go a turn 2 Jafar, then you go a turn 3 Robin Hood Shift, then you go turn 4 something or another, and then you go turn 5 Jafar Striking Illusionist, then you go ahead and play a whole new world, gain 7 lore. And then after that, of course, if Robin Hood happens to still be out and you draw another whole new world, then Robin Hood can sing the next whole new world and you gain 14 lore just like that. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy. And so it's really interesting to see how that kind of dynamic ends up working here. Really cool deck. It's going to definitely be something to test. We're going to be playing a good amount of games with the deck today to be able to see how it's going to go. I'm going to be curious to see, what's going to be happening with this. But I mean, hey, this is a different idea than what a lot of people were trying with the Jafar wheel in this case. But it's able to do really well, and it took first place in a 97-player tournament, and great job. Now, of course, we've already seen EA, pretty standard. This guy was running Lyle in this case as well. Now, Blurple not testing. There was a couple of different things maybe that he was running in this case, and that's something to be keeping in mind here as well. With that, then, of course, we also got a Ruby Amethyst Locations deck, which is going to be really interesting that we're going to be taking a look at as well. And so with that, this is going to be, of course, the Blurple deck. They got the Let It Go in this case. Friends on the other side for card draw. Finders, Keepers, Sail the Azurite Sea. Hades again. Gaston is going to be one of the more interesting ones as well. When you play this character, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may put 1 into your hand and put the rest into the bottom of your deck in any order. With that as well, it's able to gain 3 lore each and every turn that it's able to quest, and at a 4/4, that's pretty good as well. And so it's going to be fun to see how that continues to see. Maybe it sees more play. I don't necessarily think it will, but still being able to put 1 card in play from that is going to be pretty dang good as well. Now, of course, they are still playing the Iago because the 4/6 is going to be really scary, and to be able to take care of that. And then, of course, 4 Hades, like always. That's always going to be really fun. And then, of course, some McDuck Manners for some really good lore gain. And then 4 Popsicles and a Bell. So pretty standard stuff, but still really good looking as well. And then, of course, this is Ruby Amethyst set 6. Pretty standard stuff again. 2 Library, a little bit better. 2 Be Prepared in this case. 2 Pirate's Life, going to be the biggest difference. Maui Fishhook. 1 of them in the deck, and then of course you can pay 2 to choose 1. Chosen character gains evasive, or chosen player gets +3 attack until the end of turn. With that being said, if you have a Maui in play, you don't even have to pay the cost. Now, of course, this is going to be Sisu and Pirate Sibling. Maui Half Shark, Lady Tremaines for some banishing action going on. 3 Maui, Hero to All, Elsa's, all that jazz. Peter Pan, Shadowfinder, and then, of course, going to be able to have a lot of really fun stuff going with this. It's going to be really fun to see if this deck starts to stick around. It seems like it has a pretty good win rate, but at the same time, it still is struggling a little bit here. And then, of course, only 1 Steelsong in the top in this case, which is kind of surprising. But it managed to get the top 8, of course. And pretty standard stuff right there. Instead, of course, going to grab your sword, which can be really good to give 2 damage to everything. And then let the Storm Rage on, Bare Necessities, and things of that nature as well. Simba, Son of Mufasa, of course, is going to be an interesting one as well, just to kind of do the crowd control with it. And Miss Bianca, Aerial Sonic Warrior, and things of that nature to really get things moving. But yeah, I gotta say, this meta is feeling pretty wide open right now. And I mean, you've seen from the results exactly what it's able to do and how it's been able to go about, developing here. We saw Blurple on the rise. That's pretty crazy. We saw a brand new deck, the Jafar Wheel, finally get a really big win. That's pretty incredible. But with that being said, guys, that's going to be it for today. What deck are you looking forward to playing? Set champs are on the horizon. So with that being said, how all of that is going to be going for you as well. Let's go ahead and take a look in the comments down below. Looking forward to your guys' responses. But until next time, guys, have a good one.